There's a Sony event.
But will it be PlayStation? Probably. Well, I was rudely cut off by my intro.
I didn't know. Hello and welcome to Triangle Square, the PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, corporate Brett Beck, and my nice, anyway.
I too am in work clothes. My name is Saul Bridges, and this is episode 148. Lucky 148.
Lucky 148. If you've never joined us before, we are a PlayStation-based podcast, but we talk about everything from the competition on not only the manufacturing side, like Xbox and Nintendo, what we see them doing that we like or dislike, and what we'd like to see Sony either copy or steer away from. But of course, on the publishing side as well, we talk about Activision, EA, all the publishers, Bethesda, whenever they get themselves in issues. But with that said, you can find us in audio format over on podcast services, be it iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, Podbean, any of those, or you can find us on YouTube in video format. And if you like what we're doing over on YouTube and want to talk to us, we like talking to you guys down in the comments below, where you can, of course, always chime in on the community's take section, where once every episode, we at the end of the episode, we pose a question to you, the community, and in the beginning of the next episode, we go over and look at your thoughts and input on the question that was asked, which we have a good one coming up today. That was, of course, in relation to our last episode about what's the most exciting aspect of next-gen consoles. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Starting this thing off the right way is by asking my good friend and long-term partner in podcasts, Saul, what have you been up to? What have you been doing in the 3 days since we last recorded?
Yeah, we should actually mention that this is going to be a really weird episode. There's no news at all.
There's one piece of news that I know about.
There's no point. We're recording on a Wednesday, and it's super early in the week for us to record. So yeah, you guys are gonna get kind of an oddball one with this one. But this week, since it's only been 3 days, I haven't played any Slay the Spire actually. This is the first time in a while that I haven't went back to Slay the Spire.
Well, have you played any games in 3 days?
I have. Yeah, I played. I reinstalled and started up Red Dead Online, and that has been really fun. I mentioned last week that or 3 days ago, I guess. It feels weird saying that. Yeah. But I mentioned in the last episode that I wanted a multiplayer game to play with friends that you can, create your own character and carve your own path and stuff like that and work together. And I didn't realize that Red Dead was like the perfect game waiting for that for me. And I love the world of Red Dead. I love everything about it, really. And I'd never finished the story. So this is actually going to be fun. At some point later on in this week, maybe Friday night, I will probably be playing with Ryan, and we'll probably be going through some shenanigans and stuff with that.
Depending on how late you guys play. Yeah, shout out to our buddies, Shenanigans and such. Go check them out on Twitch. They do streams for a bunch of variety of different things. Go check them out. Depending on how late y'all do that on Friday, then I will probably join you. But I've got to find the game. It's still so expensive, and I guess
it's a Rockstar game.
The problem I have with that is not a problem with anything other than the fact that I technically own it and have the ability to play it on Xbox One X. Thanks to a buddy, and I do not have it on PlayStation 4 without having to rebuy it. So it's a mixed bag. I kind of, I have to see if I can find it a little cheaper. I'd prefer to pay around $20 for it since I've owned it before. It's my fault. I shouldn't have sold it.
Scoop up some games you don't play anymore and
I've already done that, man. I've trimmed every bit of fat I have. As soon as I get done with a game now, I'm trading it in. That is my philosophy. There's no need for me to keep games around that I may or may not get back around to. There's very seldom games that made that cut. Nier Automata, obviously, I will never get rid of. I love that game. I have the original Nier still. I did trade in a bunch of them. I mean, I kept Dishonored 2 because I love the game, and there's a chance I'll go back to it one day, but I traded a bunch of stuff in.
I guess that's the really cool benefit that you don't really think about with digital games, is that if you're not one to trade in, or if you are one to trade in games and you go digital like I have, I would have definitely traded in Red Dead by now. I did it with Grand Theft Auto 5, but I couldn't, so it's digital. So I just went and reinstalled 120 gigs of it.
I think that there is something I've been debating buying it digitally, but it's still full price digitally. That's why
I'm not surprised. Yeah, Rockstar Games.
If it was $40, I might even do it just because, like, hey, take the kick for trading it in the first time, but then also I'll never be able to trade it in again.
Yeah,
that's one of those things where we still don't know the long term aspects of that. Whereas if on a really sad way, gaming just bombs out and people don't actually end up playing them in terms of in a business that's viable, then you still have, like, if you have physical games, regardless of if there's internet or a server or anything, you always have access to these games. Technically, if the other thing goes down, it's one of those, like, it's almost like a doomsday thing. Actually, where it's like you really wouldn't, it's very unlikely that these things will happen. But it's totally possible.
I'm glad you said that, because I actually saw a comment on a Reddit thread not too long ago about digital versus physical, and I was kind of reading through, and somebody said, very verbatim, something like, I find it funny that people think of physical games as food and as a doomsday prepper, as if it'll never go bad.
And really what I mean,
the game market will crash. And they said, everybody take a look at Steam and even Xbox. And I was actually surprised they brought that up, because that's kind of a good point of, like,
what do you mean by Xbox's point? I mean, Steam makes
most
sense.
Games, like most games that you have wanted to play in the past decade is still available on Xbox digitally. So they're still going strong within their consoles. That's kind of a good console example.
Yeah, but and I shouldn't say, when I said doomsday, I don't really mean like in the end times where, like, you have to make your own electricity and try and play.
Yeah, you're talking about a video game crash of some kind.
And it's the thing is that a lot of people want to act like that's not really a possibility, but clearly we saw the video game crash happen in the 80s.
I think that was way before the industry
before Nintendo came back and rebounded. Got started. But my point being is that it's clearly possible, and it just comes down to what your view of ownership is. I mean, if you own the disc, then you genuinely own the game, and the ability to go and put it on any console, anything at any given time, regardless of any outer force being required. But
maybe. But I mean, at the same time, you technically own the data and the rights for the game.
Yes, that's essentially it. You own a license when you own it digitally, which is not that different.
I think
it's just it really does come down to, do you want to own the game in the full context of ownership, where you can go and give it to somebody if you don't ever want to play it again and they do? Do you want to let them borrow it?
And it's kind of subjective.
It's a weird option.
It's subjective in a weird way too, because if you have a game like Rainbow Six, that's an online only game.
Sure.
So if there's servers,
there are definitely games that don't lend themselves
your physical attachment to that game is literally going to be a useless disc.
Yeah, and I've actually mentioned that whenever the Destiny 2 thing happened, where I had the opportunity to just buy the entirety of the Forsaken thing, where it was cheaper for me to just go ahead and buy the game with all the Forsaken DLC and everything else bundled in than it would have been for me to just buy Forsaken, because of the way that it worked out.
Yeah.
So I kind of was like, well, yeah, it makes sense anyway. And I don't have to worry about the Destiny disc being around. I can switch to it. It's an online game anyway. The disc is literally pointless.
Yeah, it's like Final Fantasy VII Heavensward. Every one of their expansions, to my knowledge.
15.
Or Final Fantasy
not 15, 14.
No. Oh, yeah, Final Fantasy 14 Heavensward. Or online, I should say. All their expansions, to my knowledge, have come out as a form of disc. Shadowbringers, Heavensward,
and it's almost always with collector's editions, too. Because Elder Scrolls does that as well.
Hey, I didn't know that, but yeah, everything comes out on a disc with that too. So if you like that, I'm not hating against you. It's just, ever since I went to digital, it's just so much of a easier, more convenient lifestyle for gaming, in the sense of, I like my Switch. I got a new Switch. I just downloaded everything and let it sit there for 2 hours and download everything. And bing, bang, boom, I'm done. Like,
yeah, handhelds are the ultimate example of digital being more convenient.
Yeah,
and it just is true. You can have a carrying case that lets you carry a certain number of games, but it's not an endless number of games, and then you have to worry about them getting lost or falling out or something when you're doing it. It's, again, all things that are unlikely, but they do happen. Yeah, and it kind of does come to that point where, my big thing about why, whenever on my Vita, I actually did buy a majority of the games digitally, because it gets to the point of, well, I do go out and about with this. It means I don't have to carry these things.
Vita also
I don't carry my PlayStation around, so it is one of those things for me where I would rather stick with physical more often than not. I'm not opposed to digital. I'm not going to not buy something because it's digital. You know what I mean?
PlayStation, for whatever reason, treated Vita a little differently in the digital market. Their games tended to go on better sales.
I think that's just because it's the only way they can continue to make money out
I
of the
guess
Vita.
so. Yeah,
because
I remember fairly out in the lifestyle. Like even like I got the Vita, I would say a year out of launch, maybe, and then PS Plus, you already had Uncharted, Gravity Rush. There was like one more big game.
Those were big times, though. That was back when they had the Instant Games Collection, and that's actually what it was called.
Yeah.
And it was always the idea of as soon as you join PS Plus, you still get monthly games, but these games are evergreen on there. And then eventually that changed.
I wish
and
that
you had big
PlayStation 4 had that
games
now.
on it. Yeah.
Where they would
PS3 had that, man. Infamous 2 was on there.
You notice now, other than PlayStation Now, to get like free games, it's only PlayStation Plus. Instead, it would seem like to me that they took that cool idea of, hey, you get this instant collection. Now you just got to sign up for Now. Like it seems like they funneled that into Now in a sense and put a paywall behind it. Kind of like what Pokemon's doing. Like come out with like DLC for like $30, which to be fair, most of that stuff should have been in the game, but it still seems like a lot of content you're getting. $30 is way too high. But then Pokemon Home on top of that being $2 to $2 a month or $2 a year, whatever it is, or maybe even just $2 to send out your Pokemon from bank to that. But then you have to upkeep the bank cost, which is like $5 a year. It's like you're putting all these little features that should be there behind a paywall.
Yeah, it's a very odd one.
But we're big tangent. What have you been playing?
I ended up beating A Way Out with Mr. Matt, and it was fantastic. Got the platinum on it. Went back, like I said, it's a platinum that doesn't tie into any of the things of the game besides essentially there's one trophy, and it's a trophy for getting out of prison. It's the only trophy in the game that you just get, which is I love. I just think that's a really interesting way to do things. But man, did the end of that game go just so great. It's so good. I would love to do an in-depth talk about it. But it's one of those things where you really don't want to. It's more about talking about it with people who have experienced it and not ruining it for people who may have yet to experience it.
How long was that game?
Not very long, about 6 hours, 7 hours.
Me and Annie might actually try that game.
It's adequately priced for what it is. I think you and Annie would both very much enjoy it.
Yeah, she's still been addicted to Elder Scrolls Online, so it's gonna be hard getting her off of that. Even though Sims 4 is now free for PS Plus for the month of February, so there goes a piece of news. That'll probably kick them off.
Yeah, so just to go ahead and get that out of the way, February has got the BioShock collection, which
great.
For anybody complaining, not only is that 3 fantastic games.
Who is complaining about that?
There are people saying that it's still not enough. And now I'm wrong. This is not a big sentence. I've only seen a couple of people doing it.
This month right here is actually a really good month. You get Sims 4, which is a good game that'll last you a long time if you like those games.
You get a bundle of 3 remastered fantastic games.
Yeah, you getting like 30, easily 30 plus hours out of Sims, and you're probably getting around 60 hours total with BioShock Collection if you really try.
And that's not even counting the bonus game, which is Firewall Zero Hour for VR owners, and that's one of the best VR games. So that I think across the board they really nailed it and knocked it out of the park this month. And I like the way that they choose to do this. They've done it before, of course, but the idea of the bonus game. Where they kind of go, it's bonus game. I really hope that this is a move. This is a move toward what I already think they should have done if they're trying to get people to buy into VR. One of the easiest ways to get people to buy into something is if they already come into it with a library. So if you start giving one VR game a month away,
that's what I was going to say. The bonus game should always be VR.
Yeah. Well, and I don't even think it should be considered bonus. I think, but even if it's once a quarter, you get a VR game.
Yeah.
It's going to be easier to get people to pull into something like that. But on the other end of what I've been playing, after getting that fantastic platinum, very great game, I went and I told you that Call of Cthulhu was $10 on sale digitally.
You texted me last night at midnight, knowing damn well I was asleep.
Did I text you last night at midnight?
Yeah, it was like 11 something.
Oh, dude. Either way, the game is just insanity. So it probably was one of those involuntary responses where I was essentially like, Saul has to do this.
You gave me like a very vague description of the game, like...
Oh, I remember what I told you is that it goes for games with gold next month. That's what it was.
Oh, never mind.
So you're going to be able to play it for free.
I'm reading something you said in Discord, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I'm remembering. But you still texted me that like 11:28.
I did, and I knew you were asleep.
Yeah, I went to bed at 10.
But I didn't want to forget to tell you that that's what had happened.
Game's really cool. Almost every day at work. I don't think you would have forgot.
That's true, but it may have happened. But the game's very good. I'm actually a little disappointed in myself in not picking it up earlier. There is some occasional graphical things where it's like, man, a lot of the time you can almost forget it's AA. Just because of how interesting and gripping the story is. But occasionally it'll put just a really weird looking character model animation or something in your face, and you're just going to be like...
Oh, it's AA.
It's AA. It's not bad. It's just like, and it does a lot of ambitious stuff. It's got a destiny system, so when you do certain things in the game, it will affect your destiny, which affects different things. It's got a sanity meter in the game, so as you go through the game, it does have RPG elements. So as you go through the game, some of the decisions you'll make will affect your sanity in a bad way. So it actually makes you break your sanity and have worse episodes. There's a lot of mechanical backings that I really love.
There's a GameCube game that did that, and it was really good.
Was it the Siren?
No.
Game was it? That was a PS2 game that had some camera. I don't know. There was some kind of.
I think this was.
I never played it.
It was
but
a
was
GameCube exclusive game, I think, and it was essentially like your health was a sanity meter. It wasn't a health bar.
Oh yeah.
Now I can't think what it's
I
called.
never played it, but someone else has talked to me about
this.
It's
really good. I think we've talked about it briefly before.
Yeah. Great idea. But this one's the same way. So it's got RPG-like elements. You know, you have dialogue options when you're going through and talking with people, and a lot of them can lean on whether or not you're skilled enough in the element. So like you can talk to people and you can choose to test your eloquence, and sometimes it'll let you try it, but you can still fail because it's a check. Sometimes it immediately reds it out because it says you just don't have the ability. You don't have the necessary skill to even try it. I like that. It's kind of cool. And then, so 4 of the skills, I want to think, I'm pretty sure it's 4 of the skills are based around you finding stuff in the world and getting to use them. And as you use them, you gain CP, which is character points. And then the other 2 are medical and occultism. And throughout the levels that you're put into, you can read books and...
No, you're going far enough. You're going far enough. I want to figure this out on my own.
Okay, well, I won't say much else than that. It's a great game.
Yeah, I'm playing it now that I know for sure it's free next month for Xbox.
Yeah, there's no reason not to play it for you in particular. But great game. I hope that if anybody has any mild interest in it, it is doing exactly what I expected out of a game that is supposed to be, how am I forgetting? Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
It's doing exactly what you'd expect in all the best ways, and I like a lot of the gameplay twists that they put in with that.
And what's crazy is that as I was playing Slay the Spire like last week or the week before, I was sitting there thinking like I really want to go back to Darkest Dungeon because that game did Lovecraftian horror really well too.
I never played it, but I remember looking at the art for it and thinking, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah, it's a really cool mix of like high fantasy Victorian era with Lovecraft, and it's really good. If you like a hard turn-based game, you're gonna love this game. Also, if you love games like me and Andrew were talking about it at work, and I told him I was like, you would actually probably like this game because it's turn-based, and that's one of his favorite style of games.
Sure.
And I said it's really hard. He's like, I doubt it's hard as Final Fantasy. I said, oh, trust me. Like any NPC you encounter that you recruit can die forever. And I think that's on the base difficulty.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So it's kind of Fire Emblem-esque like that.
And that is Darkest Dungeon?
Yeah.
You're talking about?
And I think that's if they fully die, like lose their sanity, and because it's such a good game. I actually kind of now want to go download that on Switch again. So may go do that and play that tonight after we get done.
Okay.
Since I don't
that's
feel like
pretty cool.
booting up the PS4 and playing Red Dead.
I haven't played anything else, but I have had my eye on Red Dead. So Call of Cthulhu's really had me zoned in, and $10 was such a steal for it. If it's still on sale, go grab it. Though it very likely will not be at this point. But it's normally $40. I would go on the limb and say, from what I've played so far, I do think it's worth $40. But that is definitely going to be a personal value where you have to kind of understand what you value games. If nothing else, if it goes on sale again for even as low as $20, I'd say anything 20 or below is dead. You need to buy it and play it if it interests you in the slightest.
And you know what's interesting too is that Vampire, another AA game you've recommended, is also on Games Pass. Mm-hmm. So I can actually I did start Vampire on PC on Games Pass, but
dude, and the thing is these are all Focus Home interactive. One of the
Call
things
of Cthulhu
I
too?
really Call of Cthulhu is, I'm telling you, man, as a publisher for what they're doing, there's so much freedom that you can tell is granted to these people in making these games, and the budget is just modest enough to be okay with people doing it. And you get some really interesting, different games than what you'd expect to see, and I love it. I don't really know that outside of Bloodborne, which I do think could be argued to be AAA.
It is.
Then you get the point of Bloodborne's one of the only AAA style games that would really choose to delve into something like this.
Spoilers.
Yeah, it's not that bad. It's definitely one of the... But even the way that Bloodborne does it is still kind of on the surface level, and it's tied into the world, but it's not something that you're necessarily interacting with in an RPG-like way from dialogue, since that's not what those games are about.
Dialogue is mainly where it's enacted with, other than visually.
What do you mean? Well, when I say dialogue, I do mean dialogue options. I should go back and say that. I mean in the sense of RPGs that give you the option to use things.
Yeah.
And it goes in. And a lot of that comes down to just very simple things of how you choose to. This is a crazy thing, but something as simple as taking one drink. Me and one of our patrons and good friends, Mr. Brian, Atlas Unchained, we were talking about it, and he said the same thing. He took one drink and immediately, see, that's changed your destiny. Oh God,
that's kind of cool. Yeah,
so and it makes sense too because it's set in a time period where prohibition is active in the United States. So alcohol is really a weird thing, and you're on an island where prohibition is not a thing. So in terms of setting up all the story, it's really interesting and unique in the way that it tries to set these things up. And for the most part, I think it all lands very well.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's just in the strive to do something different that you can, we say it all the time, some things can only truly be explored in gaming in the AA sphere or in the indie sphere.
Yeah.
And that comes down to just, that may not always be true in terms of, you could very well get a AAA Lovecraft game that is very in-depth and very, and that may happen one of these days.
Wasn't there a horror game that came out not too long ago that was a AA game that was Lovecraftian?
There was another.
Was it?
Well, what do you mean? A horror game?
I want to say it started with an F. Like, it was a first-person horror game, I think. It may not be Lovecraftian, but it was something that came out. Not Fatal Frame.
No, it's not Fatal Frame. I'm not sure, but one of the things that a lot of people confuse Call of Cthulhu with is if you don't know much about it, is there was another game that came out very close to it that was called The Sunken City.
No, that's not it.
But I didn't think that's what you were talking about.
Wait, no, Call of Cthulhu. I wonder how heavily it's based on the book. Because I've read the book. Or the short, or the novella, or whatever I guess you want to call it.
I mean, I can't tell you. I don't know.
Because I think one of them was based on the book and one was based on a tabletop game. But I think that there's a Call of Cthulhu tabletop game. So I may be just misremembering it all. I don't know. That's weird. But yeah, there's
the Call of Cthulhu is a short story by H.P. Lovecraft. So.
Right. That's the original Cthulhu story.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to think, like, if that's the board game I'm thinking of, because I think there's a board game called Call of Cthulhu, a tabletop game, I should say. But I don't remember if that's it or not.
I'm just looking real quick and seeing if I can find anything.
But somebody, y'all let me know in the Discord for the podcast discussion. What was that, or even on Twitter? What was that horror game I'm thinking of that starts with an F? And
how long ago would you say?
I thought I was tightening up my mic, and I ended up unscrewing it all. I would say like a year ago, maybe.
Not sure. This is a very interesting list. It showed Quake as being Lovecraftian for some reason.
Is the new Quake Lovecraftian?
No, I don't think so. I don't know why it's on here. I didn't decide to read through it. It does mention Darkest Dungeon and Sherlock Holmes The Awakened, which I'm not surprised that a Sherlock Holmes game has decided to, dip their toes into Lovecraft style stuff.
If I recall, there is a Sherlock Holmes like story that does that.
Very probably, yeah. It's very likely what it's based off of. There's a game on here that I don't recognize called Canarium.
No, that's not it.
But I'm not sure what that is.
It might not be Lovecraftian. It just might be a horror game, and I might be just confusing it around the time of the release of
something else.
No, of Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm not sure. Either way, that's about all I've been playing and all I really intended to play with how busy stuff has been at work and some other background projects that I'm being involved with. So we'll see. And I'm trying to do this thing where I watch a little bit more movies, and that's tied into something else that's going on, but there'll be a time and a place for that.
Yeah. I am really kind of curious if I can find it. Not that it matters too much, but now it's going to bother me.
I'm one of those people too, where when you should know something, but you just can't quite get to it, and it nags at you until you can figure it out. You know what I hate about that sensation? Is how many times have you been, like, exactly what you're talking about, and then as soon as you pull your phone out to finally give in and go Google it, you remember it without even having to Google it?
I was kind of hoping that would happen, but it didn't.
Sometimes I'll try and fool myself, but it's almost like if it knows that I'm trying to pull my phone out and trying to get myself to remember it, it doesn't want to work. But if I'm just doing it because I'm like, I give up, then it wants to give me, my brain decides it wants to work and give me what I'm asking for of it.
Yeah, and it's not fear, by the way, people. It's not agony.
I really doubt Fear would have come out a year ago.
No, yeah, that came out, like, 2 years ago? No,
Fear?
Wait, no, I'm confusing Fear with Prey.
Okay. I thought maybe you were talking about Layers of Fear, which is a horror game.
Forest. Is that? No, that's not it. And it looked. We Happy Few. What is this trash list? GameSpot or is it Great Game Rank? But yeah. So what news do we have? I know that PS Plus games was one of them.
That was it. That was all. I was making the joke. I mean, there's some stuff going on, but a lot of it's just so much in the rumor field, and I mean that's constantly going on. That's kind of what our lead into the thing. So
the basis of this very loose topic is.
So I guess, we do have time constraints, so we're just going to have to kind of go, and the episode ends where it ends. Thankfully, last week, even though we didn't give you one the week before, was a very long episode. So we hope you guys enjoyed that. But going into this one, we do got to do our community's take before we go too much longer.
Yeah. I knew you were
so
gonna get
instead
to
of
that.
worrying about news, we're going to deal with community's take. So, of course, community's take question was simple. With next gen on the horizon, what is the most important aspect it can bring in your opinion? Simply better graphics, the severe decrease in load times, bigger worlds, or something else? Over on Discord, Mr. El Tabib, longtime friend and listener, says, given my recent accumulation of backlog, my most important aspect would be backward compatibility. Is it necessary for me? No, but definitely a huge plus. Having only one console to play all my games would be easier to manage. I am all digital, so it'll be an easy transition to the PS5 if that's taken care of. Now, to piggyback off of that, and actually something that someone else mentioned, I'm going to go over to Twitter real quick. Because I do think that backwards compatibility is a very big thing. Mr. Austin, who is Grand Lotus 96 over on Twitter, he says, all I truly want is disc-based backwards compatibility. All that other stuff is sort of what you expect from next gen. Backwards compatibility would blow my mind if PlayStation/Sony actually went and invested time, resources to get it done. And he goes ahead and mentions that from Xbox and next gen, he wants killer new IPs and a Fable reboot. Which goes back to what LTB was talking about in particular of when you have this, it is good that you're digital, all digital, because of course it'll make this transition even easier. But I do really hope that for people, when you're going to go forward and say, hey, we're going to continue to go forward with a disc-based system instead of going all digital or all something else, if you're going to do that and you're going to give backwards compatibility, this light that they've shown on it like they have, shined on it like they have, then you have the thing of, at some point, it's going to feel foolish not to have disc-based backward compatibility. Now, you can technically look at the Xbox One in a very weird way. It has disc-based backwards compatibility, but it's really only disc-based backwards compatibility so far as you put the disc in, it confirms that you do own it, and then it downloads a digital copy of it, and you play the digital copy.
Which is fine.
Now, if you're being honest about physical games right now in this day and age, all physical games are just a medium for getting the game to transfer into your hard drive so that it can play from a digital copy anyway. So in the long run, it's more about just having it to where people who have a physical copy of God of War are for some reason not outed. Now, the thing is with how similar the PS5 is going to be, there's almost no reason for PS4 disc not to work, so I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
But I extended a little bit further in my response to Austin was that I really think there's something great about the idea of having physical disc-based backwards compatibility and digital backwards compatibility all the way from PS1 all the way through PS4. That way you have PS1, PS2, PS3, and PS4 disc all readable and playable if you happen to own them. That will make... It's one of those things where sometimes when you had, if you had PS1 backwards compatibility this generation, which we did not, and it was only digital, it would kind of look weird to go look on your shelf and be like, well, I already own...
Final Fantasy VII.
Destruction Derby, Final Fantasy VII, whatever it is, and then go, well, it's here on the store, but I've got to rebuy it.
Oh, I've done that.
And no wrong. And I know people have. And sometimes it's because you guaranteed a copy that works. You don't know if your physical copy is going to work. Ease of use, if you just want to be able to easily go between it. But it's one of those things for people that do like the physical medium. Why not give them the ability to put a PS1 disc in and play it from the disc? If it's there, it's in good shape. I mean, as somebody who still owns Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 on physical PS1 disc, I would totally slap that bad boy into PS5. I have slapped it into my PS3 backwards compatibility model, even though it's PS1, they're all backwards compatible. I've played that game on PS3 a number of times from the physical disc just because I could, and I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I've done something kind of similar to that where I have the 8 Mile Blu-ray, and I was literally sitting there, and it was like across the living room, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and go put this in. And then the PS4 had to download a media player or something. Like, I forgot what it was.
It wasn't PS4 if you had to download Media Player. It might have been the Xbox, which
It
did
might
make
have
you
been
download.
the Xbox. Okay.
Yeah, the Xbox does make you download Media Player for Blu-ray, or it did. I think it still does, but it for sure did.
Well, I remember I literally went to YouTube, rented it, and then I just casted it to my TV, and I'm like, I'm done with like that. I'm like, I know the compression. There's compression problems. There's all kinds of different things.
The money is the biggest thing there. You already own it, and you paid more money to rent it.
$3
just to keep yourself from having to wait long enough to just download this thing.
Yeah. I don't remember I was on timer because I probably wasn't.
First world problems.
Tyler Haynes on Twitter says, little to no load times, 100%, although this would cut down my Twitter scrolling significantly, which is interesting. You never think about that, but there has been times that I was like, I went to a loading screen and I'm like, oh, cool. I pick my phone up and it's done. I'm like, dang it.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. I do that myself in terms of social media as a whole. I normally try and catch up on Discord in load menus.
Yeah, and then it's done loading. You're like, dang it. Like, it's not even a point in doing it.
But to back off what he's talking about, it's actually one of the things that you're going to see more often in the AA game sphere, going back to me talking about Call of Cthulhu. The way that it chooses to do everything, it's, of course, you're in hubs of areas that you move around, and there are levels that you just essentially move around. The downside to that and the optimization that they were allowed to have given the budget, time, and the resources on the team, of course, means that there are big load sections between each chapter. It's mildly annoying and it's really one of those times where they're kind of long sometimes, and it kind of makes you start thinking, wow, you don't realize just how much time you waste sometimes, because when you play some of the biggest AAA games, it's a one load and done because they have the money and time and the talent to optimize heavily. So when you're playing Horizon, you literally are just loading once and then playing the whole game, more or less.
Yeah.
But when you're doing something like this, where you have a pretty large load chunk every 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how quickly you move through the levels and whatnot, and if you're exploring a lot or what. But with that being said, it's one of those things where you're like, man, this is like what I hope the SSDs really bring to the table is, of course, AAA games are going to, and big studios are going to delve into this technology and use it in amazing ways. But what I really hope is that it gives smaller teams that do not have the manpower to try and super optimize for loading on a current gen console. I hope that it really makes even smaller teams, gives them the ability to have a game that really does have minimal or very, minimal loading times and screens in comparison to what they had this gen, because of the nature of the hardware itself. One of the things is with what we have here, if you really have the time, energy, and money, you can really say, well, we're going to dedicate a group of people who make sure this game loads as little as absolutely possible. But when you don't have that, and you're like, what we have is a lead artist and a lead designer and you go through all these things, it's like, okay, well, we don't really have it in a budget or the need, we don't have a big enough team to have paying 3 people to make sure that this game loads everything at very minimal. It's a different type of game, but it is unfortunate how much of time I've spent. I was thinking about it last night when I played a very long stretch of the game. I was like, man, this loads a lot.
Yeah.
You don't think about it, but now that they're talking about it so often, it's kind of like, man, this will be an interesting thing to see be essentially a token of a time passed in games, depending on how amazing it really is. It could be less than what they're saying, so you got to be careful, but getting the thought in your mind is still interesting.
I've also pondered about the one of my biggest pet peeves in a video game, and that's you watch a cutscene, you get gameplay for like less than 3 or 4 minutes, and then you're back into another cutscene. I wonder if that is as a new way of fancy loading, like similar like an elevator is and stuff like that. So I hope that disappears.
I do too, but I don't think it's that, because the problem with that is if you're trying to just load, then why even tease me with 4 seconds of gameplay?
Because it's better than none, I guess, in their mind. When it's not,
I would much rather you just show my character walking forward for 4 steps than me walking forward for 4 steps just for another cutscene to start.
In the similar vein of this discussion, Blaze2102 said also that he would love to see the reduced load times. Yeah. One that got me that is kind of an interesting one is Josh on Discord. He says, it may seem like nothing, but Sony commenting on how they were disappointed in that audio hasn't changed since the PS3. And he said, I'm very interested in what they are doing after buying Audio Kinetic. We don't know what they had planned wise as 3D audio for PSVR is what they're doing now. Will it be exclusive to PS5? Essentially, he's curious about what Audio Kinetic did. And what I will say here is the reason why some of the audio is not great in a majority is that these are massively overly done, not overly done in a bad way, but like humongous file sizes where the audio gets compressed. You save space on download times, all kinds of stuff. But people also realize that when you're listening to audio through a headset, you're doing it through a 3.5 millimeter jack through a Bluetooth connection. Your controller has now become a wireless adapter for your headset. Something I've noticed is that with the Astros, with my mix amp, with it being optical, the sound is crystal clear.
Yeah.
Sounds great. And it even has great audio spacing in terms of not quite surround sound, but I can tell like this is on the right side of the room and this is on the left.
Yeah. Now, that's one of the great things about just using a dedicated headset instead of one that plugs into your controller, because you're right. When you go into the controller and you go through 3.5 is already experiences loss to the audio quality. It's one of the big reasons that phone manufacturers try to lean on as to why they are getting rid of the headphone jack, despite people wanting it to stay, is that USB-C is a lossless transfer.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I may be speaking
loss.
It may not be lossless, but I think it is lossless.
I think it's, if anything, I know for sure it's less lost, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's lossless. That's a fun phrase to say.
Right.
Also, though, another thing with this is that your TV and surround system may sound absolutely amazing, but that compression in certain things. Watch the Blu-ray. Like, go if you have a 4K Blu-ray player or a normal Blu-ray player, watch a Blu-ray and then stream that same content. You will notice a massive difference.
You absolutely will.
And here's the crazy part: we have the first 4 seasons on of Game of Thrones on Blu-ray. I mean on DVD, because Annie's a peasant and bought them on DVD, and they sound better audio wise than on HBO Go, and that's DVD quality.
Yeah,
that sounds better. So it could be a multitude of things. Whether I think 3D audio is one of the things that is. It really is just a fancy way of saying 7.1 surround sound in a way, because 3D audio does work in a different location to location basis, but it is the same thing in a sense. It is surround sound.
We have some examples of 3D audio, and a lot of that comes down to how can you make audio be more 3D in a game without having to have people have something that already tells you that already does that. So you can still do a lot with 3D audio within a stereo field. You still have a left and a right. Now, of course, it gets more nuanced when you have, and even then, 7.1 surround sound, half of the ones that use it is all virtual.
It's virtual, it's not
finding
real.
ways to manipulate the audio so that it sounds away. But I think that's what's going on here. I think that they look at some of the benefits that the audio processing box for the VR has done for them, and there are a lot of great games. Like when you, as someone who's played Resident Evil 7 both on normal and on VR, the presence of sound is so much better in the VR version, even if you play the normal with headphones, if you use the same headset. And it's because of the way that they have a box that can actually sit there, looks at your movement, ties it in the audio of the game, and then processes it out in a way that sounds natural to what your head would be doing.
The same.
Now that's important when you're moving your head, of course, but on a normal game, you can still really sell immersion in a much better way if you can find a way to look at what the player's doing, where they're moving, and manipulate the sound around that in a way that feels more natural, more nuanced, and like, oh, okay, I move my scope of vision in a first-person game, 2 inches to the right. Well, that does have an effect on the way that you hear anything. It's a small one, but the more that you can give people that, the more you can get. And a lot of that comes down, I think his interest, of course, is Sony's talking about, they already talked about how audio is not made to jump, but that was made in conjunction with the statement about ray tracing and what it can do for audio. And that's such a crazy statement because I don't know.
That's something else I'm curious to see and kind of tie with this is that, ray tracing audio being a thing and how that's going to sound versus something like 7.1 surround sound. Because to be honest, if you have a headset that has 7.1 surround sound on it and it's a wireless headset, it's digital. It's being emulated. Not saying it's bad. The Logitech G933 Artemis headset I have does really, really good virtual surround sound. But yeah, it's just one of those things that's, and I know Josh knows all this too because this man's a music expert. That the way that anybody typically listens to audio through their PS4, unless you have a sound setup for a sound bar and a subwoofer and even speakers around for surround sound, no matter what, it's not gonna be the best quality it can be, just due to the amount of compression that everything has to go through. I forgot what.
Thankfully, it's so much less on Xbox and PS4 because of Blu-ray. It's actually one of the biggest upsides to it than it is on things like the Switch, man. I'm actually surprised because going through and playing Vita games recently, I'm actually really surprised that Vita never really had a huge problem with compression.
No,
but even the Switch primarily shows its compression problems on games that were intended for console and had to be ported over.
Dark Souls Remastered. I was gonna say I've never had an issue with sound compression that I've noticed, except on Dark Souls Remastered.
Yeah, story-heavy games are an issue. I mean, but even games like on the Vita thing, I gotta give it its credit. It's important now to give it more of information around this. The Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 port for the Vita, which was the Criterion made Most Wanted, not the original. The port of it was made by Criterion, the main developer, instead of outsourcing it to a different developer. And of course there's going to be a graphical decrease, but because of that, you got really better graphics than you would have gotten out of a port house. You got a much better audio sounds, and it's amazing. I played both games, and besides the visuals, they are spot for spot exactly the same, and that is amazing because you see things like The Witcher 3 or even something that's more linear like Wolfenstein 2 or Doom 2016. Whenever these things start coming over to the Switch, you start seeing them have huge audio compression things, and it's you wonder, is it just laziness or is it because you're trying to fit on a specific cart? And I think it is the cart.
It's not laziness, it is the cart. It is definitely the size of the cart and the amount they. So for those that don't know, a very quick rundown on compression is that you take a master file, and in order to get it to fit into something else, you compress its size down, which will then reduce quality. The same thing, you see somebody take a 1080p image and you cut it down to 720p and stuff like that, you can lose quality, especially if you do it in certain different formats. Well, if you take audio, say you have an 18 gig audio file and you compress it down to 7 gigs, you lost half of the quality of audio, and that doesn't always mean it's a direct half lost. It just does mean that you have lost quality.
Half of the information you had to work with is now gone.
It is now gone.
Whether that means a net loss of
it's not
half
50%
of what you can
always.
What you can notice.
Yeah. But I think that is a reason why is that the Switch, that the Dark Souls had the compression issues with audio. It wasn't a remaster of the port that came to PS4. It was a remaster of the original. So since and that's what I mean when I said, back while that Dark Souls on the Switch is actually kind of cool because it's more of the original game than the PS4. They took the original audio files and compressed those. Those are already decade-old audio files at this point, just about 2012. 8 years old.
Whereas Dark Souls Remastered on PS4
is brand new
is remastered audio.
It's an upgrade, and this is and ever since the word a downgrade.
Yeah.
And Dark Souls on Switch, by the way, is amazing. Just don't turn your volume all the way up.
Well,
I want to give about like
a couple more because two of them that I find pretty interesting. They're over on Twitter. One of them is Mr. Shadow00 Wayne. He says, "To me, it's just good games and exclusive. Obviously, graphics will improve and maybe load times, but the games are what makes or breaks a console." And that's a sentiment that a lot of people share. And that's, I like that he says games and exclusives because it's more than just about the exclusives. It is about for most people who play games as a hobby, they play more things that are from a third-party publisher than they do first-party, just by the nature of first parties not being able to put out to the same degree to match up with 6 other large-scale publishers.
Yeah.
And then the last one over on here is Mr. Aldrich Jansen. He says, gameplay improvements. Obviously, better hardware caters to this, whether it's a better CPU for more complex AI or the custom solid-state drive for increased loading speeds and faster world streaming. Also, very interested in dynamic animation technology like Naughty Dog is doing in The Last of Us 2. And what I like about that is that people often lump these into graphics, and I know that that's what they mean when they say better graphics. They really do mean the inclusion of better animation, but I like that he dug down specifically to animation, because it's not about the detail that you can see from I can see this many more fibers of horsehair in this horse because of this and this and that. Instead, it's, hey, you know what really sells me on something? Even if it looks crazy and non-realistic,
the way the horsehair moves,
if it's animated in a specific way, then it sells it in a better way than you otherwise could. Because the thing, animation is such a crazy thing that you could have a game that looks real, and the moment you go to move, it all falls apart because none of it reacts in a way that feels natural.
Blair Witch. Do not get that game. I don't care if you have Games Pass or not. Kiki, as a matter of fact, this is a challenge. You got an Xbox recently. If you have Games Pass, download it.
You just said don't, and then you said
no. I'm telling Kiki a challenge so he can feel my pain.
Okay.
The game's awful.
Oh man,
worst horror game I think I've ever played.
So Saul, this was your idea of a topic. I'm gonna let you kind of charge the way and lead the way.
Sure. So there's been a lot of like rumors and speculation about a Sony conference happening in February. You know, we joked around last episode or the episode before that about it being February 7th because it falls on a Friday, and it's Friday the 7th, FF7. And we've seen February 29th now as a reserved event for Sony. We don't know if it's dedicated to PlayStation or not, but it seems to be concrete that it is something for them. And just in general, that it seems that especially in the Twitter sphere, which is where I see all this, I don't see it a lot on Reddit or anywhere else, but like that it's more speculated that this is going to happen this month. And I find it weird because, to be fair, this topic for me was brought up because it sounds like a fun topic to discuss, but in reality, it's very shallow. There's not much they can announce at something like this at a launch event. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I kind of want to hear what people are going to say about it as a community's take more than anything. Is that if you remember back at the PS4 launch or the PS4 announcement, it was very professional. It wasn't done in any outlandish format a la Xbox One Series X. It wasn't done anything like that.
I want to back it up a little bit more from that, just because I don't know if I'd agree with the term professional. And the reason I say that is because it wasn't buttoned up in a sense of like, it was a very good mix. Yeah. I feel like it was buttoned up enough to where people who understood all the tech and stuff and wanted to know the business side could kind of be like, I understand where they're going for this.
But it was fun at the same time.
Then it was also one where a normal layperson could watch it and kind of understand it.
Yeah, well,
and they interstitial. So they would show you something that was very information heavy on specs.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand specs, you were like, well, this is kind of confusing. But then they would simplify it and go, well, this is what these specs mean, and then this is it in action.
Still more professional than what you typically see for a console reveal.
Yeah, I'd agree. I just thought it was in depth. Normally console reveals are not that in depth. Not even from a standpoint. To me, I thought it was really interesting that at the PS4 reveal, they chose to not show the box. And it seems like they're very likely going to show the box this time around.
I would hope
and
so.
And even the PS4 Pro reveal, they showed the box at
what
the end.
What was the date of that PS4 event? Was that in
February
March?
13th? It was February. And that's part of the thing that makes this interesting is that I think a lot of people are looking at the PS4 and for Sony to mirror it. And I understand because I've done it occasionally too. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it from the standpoint of the PS4 being incredibly wildly successful,
right,
it makes sense that Sony would, or at least it makes sense in a lot of people's heads. Yeah, Sony would look towards that and try and mimic some of that because they did it once and it led to a great success. And why fix what isn't broken? So follow that same standpoint. It gives you plenty of time to build up and get people ready and hyped. Gives you plenty of time to show stuff. And even though they're not going to be at E3, it lets you kind of pull that off. So the February thing is almost entirely stemming from the fact of PS4, at least early things. And now it's just the thing that I think, even if none of this is true, right? Even if by the end of this, the PS5 is not shown in February at all, it's not even coming
this year. What if that happens?
Yeah, that'd be crazy. But either way, it's not going to happen, but it would be crazy if it did. It comes down to right now, the February PlayStation 5 reveal is considered one of the industry's worst kept secrets. But the funny part is that there's nothing quite concrete about it. There's plausibleness to it. Like you used the word concrete a second ago, and I don't know if you meant to.
It's concrete that they have a date set aside.
Yes, it's concrete that they have a date set aside.
But it's not concrete that it's PlayStation.
Yeah, but it's definitely plausible that it'd be PlayStation.
Yes. Hence the whole kind of opening thing is that I don't think this is a PlayStation event we're going to see. I don't care. It's on a Saturday. I'll watch it anyways. But that's the thing is, there's so many other things. New camera. They don't do laptops anymore, really. So
no, they don't.
TVs. People have talked about Sony's official entrance to the 8K TV market and stuff like that. It could be something related to that. It could be the new Sony wireless earbuds because they've had their really good set of wireless earbuds out for about a year now. It could be a multitude of things. It doesn't always have to be PlayStation.
Now, here's the thing about that, though. In relation to what you just said, everything that they would have shown, normally what they do is they use CES which just recently took place, and a lot of people thought was going to have a PlayStation reveal.
What I'll say
it's funny that it came down to that, because it's normally CES is where they show the weird things, and if they're going to have an entire event that's dedicated to a specific place, it's not a show, that's not a thing. It would seem like, okay, Sony did not consider the Sony car to be a big enough thing to design. Did you not see the Sony car?
No.
Okay, yeah, Sony's making a car.
Oh, God.
Go look it up. But my point being is that they did not see a car that they are making and going through as a big enough thing that they needed to show it outside of CES. They took it to CES because it's the right spot for it. But PlayStation, not being at E3 where you would normally show these things, there is more of an onus to be like, okay, we do need to show this somewhere that's a dedicated event and something that we're curating, and it worked before. Why would we not do it again?
This could be a car showcase. I'll turn that shit off.
It really does make me
that
think,
stuff off.
With CES being so close behind us and them being so tight-lipped on PlayStation, it does seem like now is the time for everything to coalesce together. Now, with you having a Sony thing that's booked and guaranteed booked in this thing, it doesn't take that. It's not even a leap to think it's PlayStation and PS5.
Okay, so let me say
this. It's more like a little, when you're walking on the sidewalk and you kind of skip a little bit to skip a crack.
You're falling asleep at night and you feel like you're falling off a cliff. But
when you fall asleep with your arm halfway off the bed and then you go to slip the rest of the way, have you ever had that happen to you?
No. Why are you an animal?
Oh, I know. No, this doesn't happen to me normally. But there's one night where I just crashed in the bed in clothes, and I never go to sleep in clothes just because I don't like being hot. But my point being is that, of course, I just crashed somehow, and when I woke up because the rest of my body started feeling like it was falling off the bed.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was like, are you getting these phantom pains?
No.
But I think I want it to happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. And that's mainly a subverting my expectation thing. We kind of saw that with Sony E3 last year. And I mean, Sony E3 this year, not last year.
When you say you don't think it'll happen, do you not think that the February 9th event is PlayStation related, or do you not think we'll see it in February at all?
You mean February 7th?
Whatever.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see
I thought it was a Saturday, and 7th is a
Friday final or Friday, February the 7th, Final Fantasy 7. That's
Final Fantasy is delayed to be a PS5 launch title.
I'll burn it all down.
And they've decided to actually cut half of the game, and now Final Fantasy 7 Part 1 will be Part 1 of Part 1.
Do you mean that they would cut even more of the game than what they already did?
Yeah.
They definitely have less than half.
Now Final Fantasy 7 Remake Part 1 will have a Part 1 and a Part 2 to Part 1. But it'll have no load screens.
I'm going to make a hologram projection to send, and I'll put it on Twitter. Save me, Yoko Taro. You're my only hope. But, okay, so I think the event's going to happen. Obviously, they have plans for a room. I don't think it's going to be PlayStation. I want it to be, but I don't think it is. This information would have never gotten out if it was. They would have kept this much more secret. They would have booked themselves under a different name or something. There's no way they could have made this kind of slip. I'm
not going to say that, because let's rewind back. And of course, I'm the one who just said that people were looking too much at the PS4, but it is a good view of what Sony's done in the past.
It is, but
so when you look at what Sony did originally with the PlayStation Theater that they have, or the Sony Theater, what they did is...
That's in California, though, ain't it? New
York. So what they did is it's a New York. It's a theater that all they're doing is kind of like when you have the AT&T Wireless Center.
Yeah,
it's not AT&T didn't build that. They're just paying for the rights to.
What's the one in Dallas called?
So
the airline,
the
American Airways, American Airlines.
Yeah,
stadium.
Again, it's just a marketing ploy.
Right.
So this is the same thing. PlayStation did. Hey, we're going to make the PlayStation Theater, and then what they also chose to do as a sponsor there is they're like, well, now we're going to have. They did that, and then someone. I'm sure that someone was like, they could show off console here. And then they said, hey, here we are, revealing a console in the PlayStation Theater. Which means that that move makes sense. If someone
this ain't at the PlayStation Theater, is it?
Oh, I don't know, so I'm going to look it up. I did see the thing, but I'm wanting to double check.
I don't think it is. That's where my whole connotation that this would be more tight-lipped comes from. If this was a surprise reveal of something, we would have never known. They wouldn't have booked it under Sony or that. No, there's no way that information could have gotten out as easy as it did.
All right, let's look. This is a Tweak Town. I don't know what that is, but it's the first thing that came up. This is like a meth.
Wait, is it Tweak Town or is it
Tweak?
I think it's a Tweet Town.
Tweak Town.
Wow.
It's a guy who gets messed up on meth and then writes about video games. It's not, but either way, says Sony. Let's see. The leak is from 4chan, so prepare your salt shaker. Former senior marketing manager in the PlayStation division, the post continues to say that the final planning is happening for the PlayStation Meeting 2020 event. Now, when was this posted?
Hold on.
That's August 13th. My bad.
No, yeah, I was going to say, hold on. We're not getting our information from 4chan.
Here we are.
That's where the fun leaks happen. That's the fun leaks where they get so realistic with them, or not realistic, but get so fantastical with them that you want it to be real.
So here goes a Push Square article that's from yesterday at 11 a.m. It says, that rumored 5th of February PS5 reveal event ain't happening. Now, that would have been a Wednesday, which actually would have fit because I think that the last one was a Wednesday for PS4.
That's the problem.
In terms of people looking back to the past.
That's the problem I have with what you were saying, but go ahead. I'll talk when you finish.
Let's see. Could something PS5 related still happen? It looks like this isn't talking about that leak. So I do know what you're talking about. Do you know if Josh put it over in the Discord?
I don't think he did, but
I know I saw it. And I
think that's the issue that people have is that they're subverting their expectations to what has already happened, and they're basing it off of that, which is the Sony we have now. It's not the Sony we had then, so that's not going to be the case. I highly doubt that they're going to repeat their steps the way they did in terms of the scheduling like that. Just because
we've already seen them not repeat their steps, right? They did 2 Wired articles.
That's what I'm saying. They're doing different stuff. So you need to subvert your expectations from what they've done in the past because it's not comparable anymore. Yeah. They weren't skipping E3s back then either. And that's the thing is that like they're completely kind of different in their mindset, especially with Jack Ryan. We don't know when this could be. We literally could not hear a peep until a surprise event in May. We don't know. I don't think the February event thing is going to be PlayStation. I want it to be. But here's the issue is that people, I guess because the direct style stuff they've done, they're now adapting the mindset that a lot of people with Nintendo do with Directs. And they start saying, oh, we're going to get Direct next week. It's leaked on Thursday, and this is what's in it. They're starting to every week. There's a supposed leak, quote unquote, of something that's scheduled and what it's going to reveal. And that's what happens with the Nintendo community is they're waiting for the next Direct so that they start speculating, and then people for fun start acting like they know things.
Sure.
And it never is true.
So,
or it very rarely is true.
Okay. Is that I'll just make sure I wasn't interrupting you. So just to kind of give some information about what we're actually talking about, I did find it. So here we are right here. It says, according to a Reddit post, a Sony-sponsored event hall in New York, which is the Sony Theater, has a blacked out date in its scheduling on February 29th. So
that's
late February.
Saturday.
But you said February 7th earlier.
Right now, that was the original rumor.
Okay,
that's
what confused me.
That was the rumor that somebody said on Fun for Reddit, and then people turned it into a real rumor. Yeah.
Okay, that's what you confused me on. I thought we were still talking about this one.
No.
So it says currently marked as a private event. Some fans have assumed that since this is a venue with Sony's name on it, and the specific event currently has no name, then this would be a prime opportunity to announce the PS5.
So people are grasping at straws even harder because now there's no name attached. They're just blacked out date. This must be PlayStation.
Well, because there's a couple of things, right? So like February 5th or February 7th. If either of those were true, we would have had to have heard about it by now because you have to give at least enough time for the media to get out to it. If you're going to follow PS4, where you're going to invite press and developers out.
Still a week and a half ahead of time. That's next Friday.
But unless we hear about it like tomorrow, essentially.
Well, hold on though. Like for any press to fly out, nobody needs a week. Like 3 days to 4 days, maybe.
It's planning. I mean, it's all about do you have what's going on.
But I would expect that Monday would be the day we'd hear it because they would start sending out invitations like, hey, this Friday.
Yeah, it's totally possible that they still do. But of course, it's looking less and less likely.
Yeah, and I doubt it. I said last episode, it's not going to happen because that date came from Reddit. Somebody literally said that for fun, and then people twisted it and turned it.
Now, February 5th date did not come from that.
No,
February 5th date
was
has been
original.
for a long time. A lot of people viewed that because I think it's a Wednesday, and the original PS4 event was on
right.
Wednesday.
Which is
again, how much do you want to mirror the PS4's reveal?
Yeah, don't think that way. It's not.
But February
the same company.
is a prime time. Now, here's the thing: it doesn't have to be February. But one of the things I think you're very right, and this isn't the same Sony, and we're seeing them take a bunch of different. I should say this isn't the same PlayStation, and we're seeing them take a lot of different moves, revealing the logo at CES. Having the 2 Wired articles that show off the SSD and then the controller and then the difference in haptic feedback. They're being a little bit more okay with the idea of drip feeding information, which is a lot different than PS4, which is like, hey, we're going to have this big event. We're going to give you all the information at once besides what the box looks like.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what it was.
Yeah, kind of let down, but yeah.
When you go towards the idea of what they're going on now, it does look like there's a part of you that wants to say, well, to get this out to the biggest group of people in a manageable way and in a way that builds hype adequately for a system that's coming soon, that there would be an event at some point with them not being at E3. They have to show the system at some point. So you think sooner rather than later, there's going to have to be a big event that they're doing that on. Now, that's just from that mindset. There's nothing to say that Sony won't continue to do a Wired article every month at some point that shows more and more features, gives Wired an exclusive article showing off the console and style, what the console looks like. It's definitely possible. But there is you're kind of doing this, you're dancing over the line of how much do you want to give cryptically to build hype versus when do you want to capitalize on that hype and then sustain it with something that's big, like a reveal where you can talk about games that are coming, release date, price, what the console may look like. Definitely if you're not doing a E3. So with all those things coming together, I do think that more often, that more likely than not, we will get a dedicated PS5 reveal event. Whether it's in February or not is just really hard to put your finger on at this particular point.
Right.
So I
and
mean,
that's what I want to extend to the community as the question, because that's why we can kind of call it here. Is that what do you expect? No, I'll just do it this way. Going into February with this episode, do you think we're going to hear anything about it, and why or why not? Keep it simple, because we already think we have an idea of what we'll expect. Then we'll hear about it, but I want to hear if you think we're going to get that or not. And that's going to be the community stake. Do you think that in the month of February we'll get that?
Okay, my question to you, Saul, and this is just a wild, weird one. What do you think is one shoehorn, like shoe-in launch title? If you had to guess,
Knack 3.
The bold choice.
I bet you, if anything, it'd be Knack 3, because I didn't play Knack 2. But I guarantee you it could have a sequel to it, or technically a trequel.
Totally could.
I hate that phrase, by the way. Screw people who say that. The third is called a trequel. That doesn't even make sense.
I've heard people say a threequel.
No, that makes sense.
I'm fine with,
but trequel.
Triquel?
Or threequel, I mean.
Threequel?
Yeah, no. See, now trequel. You done throw me off. Triquel.
Okay, like a triquel.
That sounds like NyQuil you took too many times.
You took NyQuil
hey, give me one
times.
of them triquils.
It's 3 times the dose. Yeah, my one that I think is a safe bet to come onto that I'm still a little bit. I mentioned it the other day.
Garlic dip and sauce.
Saul's ordering a pizza. This man's hungry. But the game I think could come as a launch title that would make sense to me while being able to build it would be an Astrobot Rescue Mission style game that's not VR.
That'd be kind of cool.
And I think it would be family friendly. I do think that we'll see that. I think one of the launch games will try and be something that's more of a catch-all. We've seen it with almost every system. PS Vita got Little Deviants, which
quick
rip big studios, but
quick side effect, or not side effect, but side question, if you want to answer it, has anybody tried the Domino's marbled cookie brownie? And
I'm not, but it looks okay.
It looks okay, yeah. I kind of want to dessert, but I kind of don't. But that's it, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in to episode 148. This has been fun.
No, it's a shorter episode, but we hope you guys are okay with it, with us recording earlier in. And what we may try and do is like we did last time and make up with it with a longer, more involved episode next week.
This is $13 on the dot. That's
on
impressive.
The dot. Don't you love when you do that? You go through fast food and you order and it's exactly to a round number. There's something about that to me that is just, it's heaven. But anyway, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to our patrons, Dan Barber, Josh Jarrell, Matthew Green. My name is Dan. Douglas Below, Sean Santarude, Eric McAllister, Matt Sycamore, Funk Turkey, Danny Villalobos, Shadowist, Steven Salazar, The Stonard, Travis Below, Eduardo Palomino, Stefan Swanland, Coy Live, Philip Laguerre, Corey Hickerson, Solitary Red, Brian, Donovan Williams, William Digital Spooker, Derek Porter, Josh Ayers, Brandon Edwards, Sean One Neo, Tyler Powers, Dylan Kirby, and Sandcoffin. If you would like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/Nartech and see what we've got. Thank you.